Welcome in to the Lucas and Lucas podcast, where we have monster NFL news. The one and only Mike Lucas in Cleveland. Deshaun Watson plays probably the best half of football he's ever played his entire career. The Browns get their biggest win. I mean, you want to talk about biggest wins in the franchise history? Last week against the Ravens, backs against the wall, down 14 in the fourth quarter to, tie for the division lead or be, right there with Baltimore. And to have that high after that game, followed by the low 2 days later of finding out that Deshaun Watson will miss the rest of the season with a shoulder injury, has to be one of the biggest gut punches to a sports city that you could ever think of. I mean, Cleveland's right up there with, the Jets in terms of just bad luck fandom. And, Browns fans can be as optimistic as they want. They got the defense. They got playmakers on offense who can still do stuff, but you don't have your franchise quarterback, unless, Nick Foles ain't walking through that door. And
he might. He's a free agent. He might.
I mean, honestly, it wouldn't be a bad idea because Dorian Thompson-Robinson isn't, if he's the answer, what's the question? So I don't know what the Browns are hoping to get out of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Obviously, this isn't an ideal situation for anyone, but what a gut punch for Cleveland to have that win followed by this news. I mean, two of the biggest Browns wins of the season. Watson gets through the game, plays, finishes, and then you find out that he's hurt. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's obviously being Cleveland. We do our post-game show after they beat the Ravens, an improbable win. It wasn't Watson's best half ever, but he was 14 for 14, 134 yards, touchdown, a couple big scrambles. And I said on the post-game show, I'm like, Cleveland, you can go to bed happy tonight knowing you have one of the handful of people in the entire world, it's fewer than 15, that you can trust or you can feel comfortable with having the ball in their hands down a score late in the fourth quarter. Most quarterbacks, even in today's NFL, that is a treacherous and scary position to be in. And Deshaun Watson had just shown, and it appeared he was turning the corner. I mean, his season numbers aren't great. He wasn't good last year, but it appeared he started taking that next step towards getting back to the Deshaun Watson we had seen previously. And on Monday, we hear he's having an MRI on his ankle. He had a high ankle sprain too, Frank. So the question we did Tuesday was, ankle sprain, big deal, no deal, little deal, how concerned are you? And then we get Anthony sitting right there to my right, and he's my graphics guy. And he goes to the bathroom on Wednesday. We're finishing up our show prep for Wednesday. And I text him the Schefter tweet that Deshaun's out for the season. I said, get back here. Like, code red, we have to change everything. Frank, I think this is more devastating than the Jets losing Aaron Rodgers 4 plays in, because the Browns had proven with Deshaun Watson, assuming he was continuing the ascent he had shown the last couple of weeks, that they were at least a legitimate playoff contender. Not a team that could squeak in, but a team that could actually make some noise in the playoffs. I wouldn't say they were a Super Bowl favorite by any means, but a team that could compete with just about anyone in the AFC. And now Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the ultimate unknown. We went through the guys who have made their first career starts this season, who were not first-round picks, and outside of Will Levis, hasn't been good. So expectations are quite low. He's a complete unknown. That Baltimore start, you can't really look anything into it. He didn't learn he was starting until 10:30 that morning. So, I'm throwing that one out, but it sucks, Frank. It feels like I got kicked in the nuts. And we went from the highest of highs in a city that loves football like nothing else to I don't want to say a pit of despair, but a state of complete uncertainty, because we have no idea what to expect from DTR on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say that it was more devastating than Rodgers, because the Jets, I mean, fair, unfair, but I mean, there were a large portion of people thinking Super Bowl for that franchise, given what that defense could do, given Breece Hall Cook in the backfield.
I don't disagree with you, Frank, but at least with the Browns, there was proof that they could beat good football teams. The Jets have
beaten good teams. They beat the Eagles and they beat the Bills.
But I'm saying that with the Aaron Rodgers portion of it, like the Browns had proven more at this point. You just have a bigger sample size. Rodgers could have been terrible. I don't know. I mean, they both suck. Like,
they're both devastating. If we're going to argue which one's more devastating, I would vote for Rodgers.
And you're in New York and I'm in Cleveland, I would say Cleveland. There's no point arguing what's more devastating, because it depends on where you are. It's what you feel most devastated by. So
if you're basing it based on, which team had a better chance to win the Super Bowl if their quarterback stays healthy, I would vote the Jets.
And I would say the Browns. So
you really believe that?
I thought the Browns were the third best team in the AFC after Sunday.
I mean, Watson's played, that was his best half as a Brown. Like, and it came in week like, but before that, he was,
and they're still 6-3. That's my point. Imagine he puts together halfway decent games now. Like the potential was immense. But like I said, we're gonna argue which one's more devastating. We could just kick each other in the nuts.
But by the way, after this. But the fact that but first of all, he played his best half of football as a Brown with a high ankle sprain and a fractured shoulder. Like that.
Yeah.
It's color that in like the column of things that make absolutely zero sense.
And I got some numbers. Give me a sec to pull up these numbers, Frank. But during the second half, when he went 14-14, I thought in the time he was just taking what the defense gave him. His average depth of target in the first half was 16.2 yards. In the second half, it was 5.9. I thought Baltimore was just sitting back, making him take the underneath throw. 87% of his passes were short of the sticks. Well, in hindsight, it's because he couldn't throw the ball. And somehow Baltimore was unable to pick it up. And I think maybe the most magical thing about what Deshaun did in the second half was he had convinced Baltimore that he could still throw the ball. And he couldn't. He threw one pass over 10 yards the entire second half.
So maybe you're making the point even further that despite the fact that he was 14-14, he wasn't like making all these incredible plays. He was just, dinking and dunking his way to that number. So it's not like he was, putting on his Patrick Mahomes cape for a half. It was,
and that's my point. Had he not got hurt, and this had been because he against Arizona, he played a really good second half. Against Baltimore, a good second half. Had he been able to put together more consistent games with this defense and these weapons, this was a team that could beat anybody. And it just sucks because as soon as you feel you got something in Cleveland, you don't.
Yeah, I know the feeling. And so does Robert Saleh, who believes that Zach Wilson actually played well against the Raiders.
I love that so much. I love that. Frank, you go first on this.
If I'm being completely fair, like in terms of people I blame for that loss, number one is CJ Uzomah, who had just a completely just inexcusable hold that had nothing to do with the play that cost Breece Hall a touchdown. And that would have ultimately was the difference in the game in the red zone. But beside the point, I thought Zach Wilson actually recognized pressure like for the first time all season. And he was getting outside the pocket, creating space for himself and doing stuff with his legs that I was hoping to see a lot more of. But I thought the interception, I thought Allen Lazard basically had, cinder blocks for feet and couldn't move. I know he's dealing with some sort of injury, but clearly was not capable of, being a legitimate option in that game. And then, that last heat to the end zone, I don't know how he got the space to do that. And he delivered
unbelievable.
What I would say might be one of the top 2 or 3 throws of his career. Yeah. That if Tyler Conklin would have just not been in the area, Garrett Wilson catches that ball and the Jets win the game.
It was his pro day throw. I mean, that was the throw that got him drafted second. And I know you want to talk about this in a sec, so I'll lead us into it. But I feel like a bad person for trying to judge a quarterback who is consistently running for their life. Daniel Jones was the same way. And I always said, well, he has no weapons. The line can't block. How are you supposed to accurately judge that quarterback? Anyone in that position is set up to fail unless you're a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow. Unless you're one of those top elite guys, the average guys can't succeed unless everything else around them is at least decent. And right now, the Jets and even the Giants, their line are abysmal, atrocious on every level. I don't think Zach Wilson is as bad as he's shown throughout his 10 years as Jets quarterback. I do think there's talent there, and I think in the right situation, the guy can exceed. Obviously, a situational guy is not who you draft second overall, but I do think there's a chance that Zach Wilson ends up having a decent NFL career at some point. It's just not going to be in the construct of the Jets because he's not good dealing with pressure. And yeah, Garrett Wilson is unbelievable. The rest of that receiving core is not good, Frank. I mean, they brought all of Aaron Rodgers' old retared buddies out of.
Everyone always Everyone always says that. The only guys that he brought on were Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard. And Randall Cobb he's been inactive. He's been active for 1 or 2 games this year.
So would you rather have Allen Lazard or Randall Cobb or 2 guys who you trusted? Elijah Moore hasn't done a ton for Cleveland, but
I mean, honestly, Corey Davis retiring is one of the most underrated.
Yeah,
him retiring right before the season started was I had to feel I knew the Jets were kind of thin at receiver, especially when they traded Elijah Moore, but losing Corey Davis, a legitimate, really solid number 2 receiver who, has top 5 pick when he was drafted. He was a legitimate downfield threat. And, when you lost him after that, it's like, oh my God, what do we got now? It's Garrett Wilson. It's, Alan Lazard. And after that, it's, all these rookie undrafted guys basically that don't really have much of a track record. Their tight end situation, Conklin's, is what he is. CJ Uzama has been one of the biggest free agent busts I can ever. He's he's had one notable catch. It was against the Jaguars on a Thursday night last year where he was wide open and it was a 40-yard gain. And that was the only positive play CJ Uzama has ever made as a Jet. The Jets got him from the Bengals. He was he made plays for them and he came to this franchise and has done absolutely nothing. But the point of the story is the Jets have 2 guys on offense who made plays, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And after that, it's a cast of nobodies. And I would argue the Jets have one of the worst receiving corps in the NFL. It's not as bad as the Giants, but it's pretty darn close.
And it's just hard to judge a guy when he's not put in a position to succeed. And I don't think Zach Wilson's great by any means. I'm not confident he's horrendous. Does that make sense? And it's the same with Daniel Jones. I don't think Daniel Jones is great.
There was a moment in the game. It was late in the game. They never showed a replay, and maybe if you have the access to all 22, you'd be able to look at it. But the Jets threw a screen to, I believe it was probably Breece Hall. And Collinsworth pointed out that, that Garrett Wilson was wide. The Raiders defense had just forgotten about Garrett Wilson. He was apparently wide open in the end zone. If he would
when in the game it was?
It was a screen pass with. It was either the second to last drive it must have been the second to last drive of the game. So
I'll see if I can find it real quick on the old.
So it was go to the fourth quarter. It must have been the first and 10 at the Vegas 22-yard line, short pass to Breece Hall for 2 yards. It must have been where it was. I'd say that's what it was.
I'm gonna see if I can find it. If I can't find it in 2 minutes, then we'll scratch it.
It was the play right before the interception. But the point of the story is that, and I wish I was in the replay, but the point of the story is that there's just too many times with Zach Wilson where he doesn't see those things down the field. He's so locked in on his first read that sometimes if there's a guy open on the second or third read that he doesn't even bother to even look in that direction. And that's been one of the, the biggest critiques of Zach Wilson is his inability to see what is going on down the field after the fact when his first read's not there. That's all I would say.
I found the play. I'm watching it right now. Can I share my screen with you?
I don't know if it'll pop up on the Zoom, but yeah, you can show it to me.
All right. Well, you can see that at least, right?
Yeah.
All right. You ready? This is Garrett Wilson right here.
He ended up being pretty open.
But he's not running in the end zone. He's just coming across the field.
Oh, well, they said that. All right, so he's there.
Look, that's a design screen. That's not Zach Wilson. That's a design screen pass to Breece Hall right here. He's just running this clear route.
All right, maybe Collinsworth. I remember hearing on the broadcast that Garrett Wilson was wide open, but like I said, they never showed a replay. Never got to see exactly what happened.
But I do agree. And DTR and PJ Walker up at Cleveland, for example, their biggest knock is they simply are one-read quarterbacks, and that is something you can't. It's hard to fix. So, I just don't think it's fair to fully criticize him because he's in a terrible situation, but he's not been good. He has not overcome any of the adversity that you would like to see a guy, especially a guy you draft second overall, to be able to overcome. And that I do feel confident that you're able to hold against him. But at the end of the day, it's not good, Frank. New York football team sucks. Let's get on to the next thing here. Colorado. We have to talk about this. You owe the world an apology here, and you owe me an apology directly as well.
Hang on, I'm just looking at this other play real quick. All right. So I was looking to see if there was another play where Garrett Wilson was open, but it wasn't a good video. But yeah, Colorado. I feel like things just sort of stepped away from them. It was such a fun ride in the first few weeks of the season. Maybe I obviously got a little ahead of myself. When they only beat Colorado State by 3 points, that's kind of when I knew that things were, maybe not necessarily going as well as I thought they were going to go, because they should have blown the doors off Colorado State. And after that, they lost by 36 points to Oregon. Only lost by 7 to USC, even though they were down big in that game. Beat Arizona State. Lost in double overtime to Stanford. That was a 29-0 lead they blew.
Yeah.
28-16 to UCLA they lost. 26-19 Oregon. So it's not like they're getting their doors blown off, but they've just I think you're sort of seeing the flaws being exposed a little bit. But hey, listen, their win total going into the season was 3.5. They already exceeded that. It's not like, all the prognosticators were predicting that they were going to make the college football playoff and they were a huge bust. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm, an expert on talent and, recruiting, but clearly there's a major deficiency with that team and that line and in the trenches, especially with Shedeur running for his life on a lot of plays. But there's no doubt that, Shedeur for me is like, he's the second or third best quarterback that I would take going into the draft.
100%.
And Travis Hunter to me is still, whenever he does go pro, is a no doubt top
next year.
So
yeah,
but beyond those guys, like it's honest, it's like a cast of like scrubs.
It's because Deion and once again, I think Deion's going to be successful at Colorado. I just thought
you think he's going to Texas A&M?
Hell no, he's not even considered.
Hell no,
not even considered. Deion hasn't proven anything. Like A&M, I think they should hire Urban Meyer. They're not going to. They're going to end up hiring.
Urban Meyer's never coaching again.
Well, I'm just telling you that's who. If I was in charge, that's who I would hire. I think they're going to end up hiring Jeff Traylor or Mike Elko, one of the two. But with Deion, like I told y'all, he had a couple really, really good players and a bunch of guys who are looking for a fresh start. And fresh start guys, are either looking for a fresh start because A, they weren't good enough to play where they were, or B, they screwed up and needed a fresh start. And you're going to hit on a bunch of those and you're going to miss on a ton. And when you replace 75% of your roster with those kind of guys, you may hit on 10, you may miss on 60. And the averages of that just do not equate to winning football. They have probably two of the best players on the field, maybe the two best players on the field in 85% of games they play with Hunter and Shedeur. But outside of that, they have the 15th, 16th, 17th is where their next best guy comes into play. So they are talent deficient, and I do think they will be good. Give Deion 3 years, but the way he retooled that roster with so many new guys learning a new system, like that philosophy does not work. That was destined to fail from the get-go.
By the way, and huge props to Fox for the way they've orchestrated their schedule this year because they hammered Deion early. They were all over the hype train when they were great to start the year, and then as soon as they started, tilting back the other direction, they pivoted to Ohio State and Michigan.
Yep.
Those I'm just been honestly blown away at how Fox has configured their schedule to capitalize on the hottest stories of college football. It's honestly been very impressive because if they would have waited for Colorado, they would have completely missed the train, but they hit it right at the beginning, right when it was the highest peak. And as soon as it sort of dipped a little bit, they punted it to the side and never looked back at it. I was extremely impressed by the way they handled that.
Speaking of opposite of impressive, the NBA midseason course. I have 2 words, Frank, and we don't have to touch on this anymore because I think they are 2 words. Ready? God awful. I'm done.
The courts or the actual?
The court, the tournament, whatever.
The tournament's so dumb. The fact that the NBA is like actually trying to like sucker people into thinking that this thing actually matters is like an insult to my intelligence. There's no way I'm getting more up for, a Tuesday night Nets game against the
Magic.
The Magic than I would like what are you selling me on? Like I heard Doc Rivers on the Bill Simmons podcast talk about for the teams that haven't won, like the Celtics, like winning that tournament, like it could give them the boost of confidence that they need to like when it actually matters in the finals to reach that peak, which I get, but I'm not getting when it first came out, I was shocked that there was no incentive for the fan. If there's incentive for the player because they get an extra like whatever $500,000 or whatever, so I get it from the player perspective, but for a fan perspective, like I'm not going to be more into a game so that Lonnie Walker can get an extra $500,000. Like this doesn't do it for me. So I think it's so dumb that the way that they're like pushing it on social media. I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but like it's not selling me one bit. To me, it's ridiculous, and it's not as ridiculous as James Harden with the Clippers, 0-5.
It's beautiful, Frankel. It is like the heavenly angel has descended upon the NBA, and she's a perfect 10 with the face, the body, the legs. It's beautiful. I can't get enough of it. I'm infatuated by how bad the Clippers are.
I just wish that because as you're seeing the Sixers being really, I think they lost to the Celtics on Wednesday.
They lost last night, but yeah.
But the Sixers look like one of the best teams in the league, one of the top 5 team in the NBA. And I just know that if they would have had Harden, there's no way they would still be playing this well. But it will always be gratifying to see Harden struggle like this because he single-handedly just ruined what could have been a great thing with the Nets. You could also argue Kyrie had played a major role in that as well. but he was the guy who really started the negative, basically turned what was a great situation to an extremely negative situation when he essentially quit on the team after Kevin Durant got hurt, and has pouted his way to 2 different franchises after that and seemingly already ruined both. So, and listen, he's probably going to make the Hall of Fame because he's such a great, prolific scorer with the Rockets, but I will always remember James Harden for being a franchise killer, a guy who couldn't get it done when it mattered most. And assuming that he does get in the Hall of Fame, which I think he will, that's great and all, but I don't view him as one of the greatest players in the NBA history. I would never view him like that.
No, he's one of the greatest team killers and one of the greatest choke artists in NBA history. And those are the only things that he will be associated with in terms of the greatest of all time ever. It has nothing to do with basketball. It has everything to do with the negative. Also, maybe the greatest strip club goer of all time, and also maybe the greatest self-saboteur of all time. But nothing to do with basketball. It's all the negative with James Harden. And the Clippers, they wanted to dance with the devil, and they're seeing the results. And I made Anthony laugh over there. I'm not sure if he's actually listening or not. He liked that one. So, I may clip that for social.
If you had said an over-under for how many more months James Harden is a member of the Clippers, what would it be?
Say it one more time.
Setting an over-under for how many more months James Harden's a member of the Clippers.
Well, how much longer is this season?
So the regular season ends in April.
You know what? I think he's gonna end up re-signing with the Clippers because they're opening their new arena next year.
What kind of a 1-year deal, a 5-year max deal?
No. Oh, his chances of getting a 5-year max deal, the same chances I have of being 6'7" tomorrow. Absolutely -0.
So the reality is that James Harden suck it up and have the pride to take a 1-year deal to stay with the Clippers.
It'll be a 2-year deal. 2-year. And that way they'll be all aligned with Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, and before it all goes away.
If I'm Ballmer, I get that Kawhi in theory is a great option to have, and but Kawhi's just not the same guy that he was. He is.
No, I don't disagree. I'm just saying they all have 2 years left, so you might as well just go. This is our window, and then we blow it up. So you're not trying to stagger.
I think the window's already closed. The Clipper,
No. I don't think they have a chance, Frank. I'm just saying that to me that makes the most sense by the way that they built this team is you can't get out of these contracts. You might as well just continue to go all boats ahead, and then they're all done at once. So you're not trying to stagger the in and out of James Harden, Kawhi, Paul George. We're committed to these guys already. We can't trade them. Let's pray they're healthy. But I don't think it's so.
Real quick on Ben. So Ben Simmons hurt his back again. I guess we thought
he was playing better, man. He was playing better.
We were told that he was over all his issues, which like I said, believe what you want to believe. But it just feels like I do believe that he wants to be out there. But I've never heard of another player who consistently has these types of issues. Is my only thing about it. I've never heard of nerve impingement in his back with any other player, and it seems to be routinely happening. And he's had the surgery, but I guess it's gotten to the point with Ben Simmons where he's never gonna be returned to the guy who was an All NBA guy. So the quicker that Nets fans and accept that reality, the better off everyone will be. Because it's just not he'll have moments, but it's never gonna be 82 games looking like one of the best players in the league. It's those days. We just have to accept those days are over.
I totally agree. I do think he could still be a valuable piece of a team. You just can't rely on him. He has to be a cherry on top piece, not a guy you rely on, just health-wise. And speaking of health-wise, Frank, I saw you tweet about this, but our boy Giancarlo Stanton, when the GM calls you injury-prone, you're making that much money, you've hit rock bottom.
Who has hit rock bottom? Brian Cashman or Giancarlo Stanton?
Both.
All right, so I wholeheartedly agree with everything Brian Cashman said.
He's not wrong. I agree.
Because I hate Giancarlo Stanton. Not actually, if I saw him, I hate him as from a Yankee fan perspective because he is an albatross contract. He can't move. He can't run. He can't play the field. And last year's hitting was horrendous. So in my book, that's
what's he doing? He can't hit. Yeah, what's he doing?
It's a waste of a player. I'm praying that the Yankees can find a way to trade him. And I don't know that this was the right thing for Cashman to say publicly, even though he's right. Maybe he's trying to light a fire under Stanton's tushy. I just don't know what his objective was by saying all that stuff. Stan's agent responded by saying that this is like why players don't want to sign with the Yankees, which created a whole other thing. But I hope that, if his goal is to try to push Stan away from the Yankees and try to have him request a trade, then I'm all for it. If that's what the end goal here is, then sign me up. I will be a leader of the pack.
My 2 cents, Stanton can't play any worse. So why not call him out? Like, if you have a disgruntled Stanton versus a happy Stanton, he literally can't play worse. So, like, what's the harm in trying a different tactic? You've babied him for, 6 years now? 5 years? How long has he been a Yankee?
First 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. It's been 6 years.
Yeah. So you've babied him for 6 years. Screw it. Do they have 7 years left of that contract?
No. He has 4 years and like $98 million left.
Well, that's actually not that bad.
So he's 25, 26, 27. Sorry, 24, 25, 26, 27. So 4 years left on the club option for 28, which there's no chance in hell the Yankees.
No chance to pick up, yeah.
So he has 4 years left and about $98 million.
That's actually, that's a lot of money, but it's not nearly as much as it could be. The
Yankees need to find a way to include that contract, maybe eat some of the money and get Juan Soto to the team. If I'm Brian Cashman, that is my number one objective, and I don't care what else you do over the offseason. Find a way to flip Stanton, eat some of the money, and get Juan Soto to New York. That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's been an absolute net neutral.
Stanton?
He's had a couple good.
I'd argue he's done way more harm than good. He has had good moments in 2020 during that postseason run, and he had a couple good moments against the Guardians. But other than that, terrible. Hurt, can't run, can't play the field. Have to put him at DH because there's nowhere else for him to go. Strikes out at an alarming rate. Batting average plummeted. I made this point to the Talking the Yanks crew at the Yankee game that Stan ruined all the positive mojo around the Yankees because after 2017, like they were not the little engine that could, but they were like this feel good story. They had a bunch of guys who just grinded hard, and then they get Stanton who just flipped everything to a negative direction, and they haven't been able to flip it. But anyway, that will do it for this podcast. Be back next week when the Jets lose to the Bills and Aaron Rodgers declares that because the Jets are out of it, he will not be returning for the 2023 season, and then all eyes will shift to 2024. See you next week.